between Pridelands and Juma, and very briefly Penguin Beach. Hopefully the weather down in the Cape is a little more conducive to viewing tomorrow. But from our side, I think it is pretty much time to say goodnight. And yeah, we hope you join us again tomorrow morning for another promising morning drive in the Sabi Sands. And hopefully a little bit more leopard action in store. Good night, all the best, see you in the morning.
Hello everyone, and welcome down to a glorious and beautiful Stony Point. We have sunshine today and we're very excited to be down out here in the left wing. So my name is Jax, I'm going to be your naturalist down here today. We have Flippy behind the camera, he's joined us, and we are watching two penguins who are flirting very, very badly. So I think we'll start off our show having a look at these two birds. The boy is super interested, but she's not feeling all that interested in him. So let's go on and have a look at these two. So in this scene here, we have two juveniles and two adults. So I think the female is actually sitting on the left. I think she moved away from the male. So earlier on, he fell on top of her, and she looked like she might be interested, but she's now moved away. It's very interesting at this time of the season that we've been seeing a bit of this mating behavior. And just a reminder that we are a live show, so send us your comments and questions on our website using our channels page or using the hashtag WildEarth on Twitter. And if you're under the age of 18, email us at kidsquestions@wildearth.tv. That might be the boy who is actually on the left and might be trying to head back towards the female. Let's go have a look at the weather before we continue on with the saga. So it says it's 16 degrees here, and it was also 16 degrees yesterday, but it's amazing what a little bit of sun can do for your day. And we've got the two juveniles who are looking a little bit irritated with each other. And earlier on I said I think that the female is on the left, but the female is in fact on the right. Didn't watch the male move to the left. These juveniles are sitting very close to these two adults. The male is the one who is now sitting on the left and just sunning himself, looking a little bit dozy. The female is preening her feathers. So Kate, you are hoping this penguin finds someone soon, and you always kind of hope that there is someone for everyone. I do think that the penguins who are mating now, just on premonition, I think that they're the less experienced birds. So I think these are the birds that are new to this whole mating game. I think dating is tough regardless of what species you are. And yeah, he's now giving her some space, but we watched her do this before the show. So Flippy and I were sitting here, and we watched how he would go to her and she'd reject him, and then he'd give her some space, and then he'd go back. So I think he's playing the sort of wearing down game, where he's hoping that eventually she might like him.
Tingana has been affectionately known as the Duke of Juma for many years, but his path to the throne was not an easy one. Mvula was a legend from the south.
This is the cat that I'm pretty sure Tingana was sniffing around for. That is Mvula. How exciting is this?
Eventually, Mvula lost, but his young son Quarantine started to push through from the east. At the beginning of 2018, an intruder arrived. His name was Hukamuri.
So we're just watching these penguins navigating the tidal pools, and we're just trying to figure out where exactly they're off to. They are bumbling about. So they might just be enjoying a swim. Yeah, it looks like they're just cleaning their bodies. So Sarah's asked a really cool question. Thanks for joining the show, Sarah. And you want to know if penguins prefer swimming in low or high tide. And I think that the penguins love the pools in low tide. I think that when the tide is out, the pools are a lot more protected. So these penguins are not swimming in the most protected space, but it's still a lot better than the open ocean. I think at high tide, things become a little bit more comical because the penguins tend to get smashed by the waves a little bit more. So often you'll see at jacuzzi, they quite enjoy jacuzzi at low tide, and when they go out to sea, when they go out to fish, I think that the tide is not that important because they have to get out, they've got to go and find food. You can see these, I think it's 3 penguins there now, are just having a fun time cleaning themselves. So I would say it's low tide. Flippy, what do you think? Flippy agrees. He says low tide is a good time to go for a nice swim as a penguin. It's certainly much easier to enter the ocean when the tide is low. I think these penguins have come down. Yesterday was nice and cold, but a lot of the penguins, I think after a cold, wet day yesterday, were sunning themselves. And I think these guys have just come down from the nests to enjoy the cool water and clean themselves in the water. The birds can clean themselves just on dry land, but you'll find that most birds love a good bath. I always find it so funny how they stick their heads under. They almost look like they're looking at things under the water below them. Daisy says that she loves to watch these penguins swim, and I have to agree. I think it's one of my favorite behaviors is actually seeing them in the water. I also love to hear them call, but watching them bob about, and I love it when they're really cleaning themselves and they really get into it, and you can see that they're using their flippers to pat themselves down. You can see the black and white striping of that penguin perfectly. It's quite funny because they're choosing the surgiest spot to have their bath. If they went out a little bit further along, they wouldn't have the waves sort of crashing on them during the bath, but they don't seem too deterred by it. Laura, that's a really good question. So penguins would swim with their eyes open. So penguins do use their eyesight under the water. With most sea animals, they can see, and they can see much of what we would be able to see. Often they have less color range than we do because under the water you don't need to see so far. I think penguins can see a lot better than us under the water. So they will keep their eyes open, and that will help them to locate fish and see each other under the water as well. I'm trying to think of an animal that swims under the water with its eyes closed. What some animals do is they do have what we call a nictating membrane, and that membrane will just cover the eye often when they're going in for the kill. So penguins might do it as well, where they'll just cover their eyes because fish have very pointy fins, which can sometimes cause a bit of damage to the eye. So often they'll just either close their eye or they have a membrane that they cover the eye with just to protect it.
This morning we were driving and suddenly we heard a lot of commotion. I think the wild dogs might have caught an impala then, or the leopard might have caught the impala, and as it was dragging it, the wild dog saw it, started chasing the leopard up into the tree, and then the hyenas came to steal it. But what an incredible sighting.
With the traditional stories I've learned that it does have future and a past. If you follow it, you will never ever go wrong in life. It's very important because it contains, of course, history background and the knowledge of the bush. In every family they have so-called a tree or amarula tree. We'll go there and kneel down and talk to the tree and say, we want success in the family.
So we are back with the couple that is not yet established, and we were watching these two juveniles who were having a bit of a fight. So Ashley, you're asking how juvenile penguins find food. So that's a very good question. So the juvenile penguins are not as experienced as the adults. The adults never teach them how to fish, and they're also much slower than the adults. So when they go out, often they will try to feed on fish that move a lot slower than sardine and anchovy. So they might try to do a bit of fishing along reefs. And then what they will try to do is they might try to form groups of juveniles, although you very rarely see a group of, 3 or 4 juveniles. It's often 1 or 2 around. But what they really want to do is they actually want to join in on the adult feeding groups, because the adults will then locate the fish, they'll help them hunt. But we've mentioned it on the show before, and if you have a good look at the juvenile, you can see that's sort of facing to the side. If you have a look at the eye of that juvenile, it's got a bit of white around the eye, which is a partial molt that they undergo. So when they're very young, they don't have that white, but they have that white when they're a little bit older because it allows them to join the adults in the adult feeding groups so that they're able to sort of take advantage of the adults' experience and learn with them. Because the adults don't like them in the feeding groups. They think that they're slow, they get in the way. So it's very tough as a young fledgling African penguin to find food. So they will start off on the reefs, they'll start off with slower fish, and then hopefully at one point they'll be accepted into these adult groups, and the adults will show them the tricks of the trade, not in a kind, let me take your hand and show you sort of way, but just in a, you're here, you watch and learn sort of way. But speaking of watching and learning, we also have something exciting walking towards us very slowly, or in fact 11 exciting things walking towards us. Because we have the crazy eights, which are 9, and they have grown so much already. It's actually a bit inconceivable. Some of the chicks are much further behind the adults now. They scamper off by themselves. And these chicks are very energized because they've just finished a nap. But just before we started the show, they were napping. Oh, look at them running. They look like children who've just woken up. They look like they are ready to be little terrors, cleaning themselves and all full of energy while the parents were awake and watching them. Stefan, that's an interesting question. You're asking if Egyptian geese build nests. So Egyptian geese like to find places to nest in. So I do believe that they might line their nests, and they might line their nests with feathers. But often what they'll do is they'll nest on the ground. They'll nest in a hollow. They will nest here. They enjoy nesting in the penguin burrows. So if they can find ideally a protected space where they can lay a nest, then what they would, but they wouldn't construct a nest like a hammerkop nest or cormorant nest per se, although they might adopt a nest that another bird has built. They have actually been known to share nests with other ducks. I think there was a case of them sharing a nest with a white-faced duck, a whistling duck. But for the most part, I think they prefer to actually nest on the ground, or they most often nest on the ground in this area. But Flippy and I were talking before, and we were talking about the nesting.
Ribbon is the matriarch and has recently been seen with injuries to her body. Corky was the previous matriarch and is believed to be taken back her status. Intima was born to Ribbon in February 2017 and also enjoys a high ranking. Heart is the next rank down. A named June is believed to be the lowest rank, easily recognizable by a floppy left ear. 3 brothers named the Avoca males arrived in Juma in 2018. This area had recently been vacated by the Birmingham boys. In 2019, they were seen mating with females from both prides and went on to sire cubs with them. The most recognizable lion in this coalition is Darkmane. Aside from the dark mane that gave him his name, he can be recognized by a distinctive limp.
So these little goslings or ducklings are now trying to find themselves some sea slaters to enjoy. So geese love to eat algae, but here we often see them enjoying the little sea slaters, the little invertebrates that feed on the kelp. And I think most birds will adapt if they find this food source. I think they realize that it's worth trying because it's just in such abundance. And so we've seen the cattle egrets come and feed here, and we've seen the wagtails loving the shoreline. The ibis, which didn't typically feed on the shoreline, have in the last few decades really started enjoying feeding on the sea slaters and on the beach hoppers here. And you can see the one adult is still having a look around and just making sure that there's no threats about. The other is feeding. Kathy Lee, it's so great to have you on the show. Thank you for watching. Thank you for joining. And you're asking if they're one of the fastest growing chicks. So I think that chicks that are born sort of right and ready, so born waterproof and born ready to swim, do tend to grow very fast. I think a lot of your birds that live on the ground grow very fast because the quicker they grow, the safer they will be. So I wouldn't say that they're necessarily, I suppose they are one of the fastest growing chicks in the area. Can I say it that way? Penguins and cormorants take a little bit longer to fledge. These guys take 3 to 5 months to actually leave their parents or to grow and develop fully. But they certainly in this first couple of weeks have grown exponentially. And I do think that's common in most animals and most seagoing animals. The first few weeks you have huge development to prepare the little animals and the little birds to be ready to start fending for themselves. But I think there's also so much food in this area that these chicks can just eat and eat and eat, and it'll cause them to grow extremely fast. I think they're living off of protein at the moment. They do eat algae and they do eat vegetation. But certainly whenever we see them eating, it's always the sea slaters.
In that tree are 2 carcasses. There's a duiker carcass and a waterbuck. Well, it's not as graceful as... He's a bit hesitant because, well, climbing a tree is not the easiest, but he will get up there eventually. So let's see, there he goes. And look at the power in that. That is a massive 500-pound cat that has just climbed the marula tree and is up in there. How cool is this? I don't know how he's going to do it, but let's see.
We've got this African black oyster catcher who I thought was looking for limpets, but it actually looks like it's feeding on the sand. So there are a lot of little worms in the sand that these birds really enjoy feasting on, especially at low tide. I think worms are probably a lot less energy. You've got to eat a lot more worms than limpets if you want to be full. But dislodging a limpet is quite a tough job. So I think just poking your beak in the sand. So So Nadine, our wonderful director, is saying that the oyster catcher's not looking for worms. This oyster catcher is looking for Cedric's hat amongst the seashore. She's worried that it is lost. And this oyster catcher is doing Cedric a huge favor by trying to find his limpet hat. I really do think his hat looks like a limpet. And we are going to be chatting a little bit more about limpets. The tide is going to be low tide during our show tomorrow, so if all goes well, Flippy and I will be spending a bit of time in the intertidal zone. So what you're seeing is the very top of the intertidal zone at the moment, and it looks very boring. It doesn't look like there's much happening there apart from that oyster catcher. But the more I read about it, it is just the most incredible environment on the planet, actually, because it's such an extreme environment. So Erin, that's an awesome question. That's a really cool question. You're asking if the oyster catcher would survive the safari climate. And these African black oyster catchers can be seen on the coast of KwaZulu-Natal, which is one of our warmer provinces. It's one of our warmer ocean provinces. And so I think the Lowveld it's not very dry, but it's certainly a little bit drier than KZN. But KZN, KwaZulu-Natal, the province, is very hot and it's very humid, and the oyster catchers seem to do very well in that area. There's less oyster catchers there than what we have living here, but I think that they're hardy enough to handle extreme temperature. I think that they would be able to survive it. I just think it's a matter of food that would be an issue. What would you say, Flippy? What do you think? Oyster catchers in Kruger? Flippy's saying no. Do you think it's too hot for them? It's too hot. Flippy's saying it's too hot. But then if you think about the West Coast gets up to 45 degrees Celsius. So then that is such a good question. We've got a hot lip gull. We also have a little egret who's now hanging out around. So we'll look at this resting hot lip gull, and then we might catch up with the egret because it looks like it's hunting. The hot lip gulls are really not in huge abundance at the moment. I think since the kelp has dried out a bit in this area, all the birds have made their way to fresher kelp resources. But the little egret is on a mission. So let's go and visit this egret and see if it's going to do some fishing. I do love to watch them because they always look like they're up to no good when they are walking around. And those bright yellow feet are just incredible.
At WildEarth, our explorers are treated to a weekly newsletter, bursting with fascinating features and never-seen-before snippets. Recently, we have added some brand new sections which we think you will love. Find out what happens behind the scenes with our crew when they are not live on WildEarth. Have a giggle at our moments of the week from both Safari and Penguin Beach. And Ranger Eric answers your questions with fascinating and in-depth explanations as to the whys and hows of nature.
Wild dogs coming out of, or the puppies coming out of the den site making those very high-pitched noises.
All of this and more delivered to your inbox every week. So what are you waiting for? Head over to our website, sign up to be an explorer, and join the adventure. WildEarth Explorers, it's in your nature.
So we are hoping to witness a kill here. Oh, this is very exciting. So this little egret is actively hunting some fish. So I think the waves just come in and caused a bit of trouble. So we'll just see. The egret is walking along. and you can see very interested in catching fish. It was a really close call, but it looks like it missed the fish, but is still actively on the hunt. So I think we'll just spend some time watching to see. I actually think what happened is that the wave came in and all the fish decided that they would get out the area. And little fish are super adept at this. They pick up on predators really quickly and they scatter. But you can see that this egret knows that there's fish, even if we can't see it, just by the way the bird moves its head. Oh, there we go. That was very cool. I think that was a clipfish, or it was a very long little creature. So that wasn't schooling fish that it's caught. They're actually such a pretty bird. Those beautiful wispy feathers. You can see, still on the hunt. If I was an egret, I'd also hunt for the clipfish. Sandra, you're asking the different hunting tactics that the little egret can use. So you're seeing one of them now, where the egret will run after. There's a blow of a whale. That was a very big whale blow. Okay, so I've just spotted a whale blow, so I'm going to answer your question, and I'm just going to look at the sea. And the egret has gone away, but you were asking the hunting tactics of the little egret. So sometimes what they'll do is they'll run after food. So they'll run after something and then they'll stab it. And I believe that they can actually also use their foot and tremble their foot. So as I like to say, we've got so much happening today. So sometimes the little egrets can also tremble their foot and actually attract a fish or sort of distract whatever they're looking at and then hunt. And then I also believe that they will stand still for quite a long time. So sometimes you'll just see them standing and not moving. And I think that sort of lulls the fish into a sense of security before they pounce. Or not pounce, but rather ambush the fish. So they can employ several different tactics. So they can sit and wait, they can chase after fish, and then I think they can also use foot trembling, to my knowledge, to help them actually catch the fish. So I'm still watching this little egret. I'm watching the sea as Flippy watches the egret because I am desperate to see another blow. And this is the time, it's fairly early, it's usually about mid-May. You do start to see humpback whales migrating up the coast. So we're not going to pan to the sea just yet because it is super tricky to spot. If I do see another one, we will try our best. So Eugene, I completely agree. I think often we get caught up in, wanting to see really large animals hunting, but I get just as much of a thrill watching a little egret trying to catch a fish, or the crowned cormorants that we have here. We get to see that as well. I think that's something that nature teaches you, is that the smaller things are just as wonderful and just as interesting as the larger things, and the more time you spend watching wildlife, the more fascinated you become by things that at first didn't interest you at all. And Flippy and I were actually saying before the show that, we both are reading a lot more about things we never did before because of WildEarth.
All All WildEarth explorers have a chance to join our naturalists in a monthly fireside chat. This is a great way to learn more about our guides, animal characters, and wildlife locations. We would love to hear from you as to the topics that interest you the most. Email us your ideas or tweet using the hashtag WildEarth, and we will be sure to take them into account when planning our evenings around the fire in the future. WildEarth explorers, it's in your nature. Here at WildEarth, we have added a range of new products and designs for the WildEarth shop. If you love being in nature, then we have a new range just for you. Our animal character line continues to grow, and this week we have incorporated a beautiful Tandy design to celebrate our favorite queen's life. April is Earth Day month, and investing in our planet is the message. And finally, there's a range just for our very own WildEarth explorers. Head over to our shop now and see what you can find.
All of our Egyptian geese are now cleaning themselves and preening. Looks like the chicks are settling in for another little rest. They really do have a wonderful life at the moment because they're constantly guarded by their parents. They eat a little bit, they rest a little bit. I love to watch how they just huddle up and see they get progressively closer together. And they all tend to sleep in just one big fluff ball. And I do think that the parents take turns. I think the females tend to watch the chicks a little bit more, but you do sometimes see how the different adults take turns monitoring the little ones. It's also amazing to see how far the little ones will move from their parents and then sort of come back to them. At the beginning, they would stay so close to the parents, but now they're starting to figure it out for themselves. They're starting to gain confidence. So Kendra, I think that's the highlight for many of us here at Penguin Beach, and even the other people who work here, they actually also watch Penguin Beach. Someone told me yesterday that they didn't realize that we had 9 chicks, and so they've been watching the show and you know, getting invested in these 9 beautiful goslings. And I do think, I think it's my favorite part of wildlife watching is watching babies grow up. I think there's nothing cuter than a baby animal. And I love it when they get to the stage where you can see them pushing boundaries and trying to figure stuff out for themselves. You can see some of the chicks are all huddled together, and then you just have others that are still exploring, still having a look around. It looks like they're settling in for another little nap. And we've got the oyster catchers. Actually got an oyster catcher who's eating a limpet, I think. It's the one to the left, Flippy. So we've got 2 oyster catchers, and the one's a little bit closer to the sea.
My favorite thing about WildEarth are the animals and the interaction and the ability to wait and watch and not rush off. You get to watch their behavior and learn about the individuals. I would like to see the hyenas at the hyena den, and I have. There they are. Look at that. If I could be any animal, I would be a cheetah. I would love to run fast.
Our Western Cape coastline is graced with the Cape fur seal. This playful species is curious and entertaining. At Hout Bay Seal Rescue Centre, seals in need are rescued, fed and nursed back to health by our well-trained team of dedicated staff and volunteers. This wonderful legacy of the centre is continued as these protected creatures are rehabilitated and released back into the wild.
I'm so sorry, we just had a little bit of a technical difficulty, but we are back to enjoy the last bit of today's show. I think it's been a really calming show, a very relaxed one. We've got 20 minutes left, although I suppose watching the little egret hunting wasn't all that relaxed. It was a lot more invigorating, in fact. We're just having a look and taking in the wider scene of this zone that we see. You'll see to the top of the rocks. The top of the rocks closer to the kelp line are really bare, there's not much living on them. And the closer you go to the ocean, the more you'll start to see your seaweeds. And that's what we really want to discuss on tomorrow's show, is this zone between the high tide and the low tide. Because that's where we spend most of our time on Penguin Beach. That's when we have most of our action. And Flippy has found a penguin in the water, having a bit of a swim. You see, they do kind of surf the waves as they come back in. Sometimes they do catch them. You can see the water there is very dirty, and that's purely because of the kelp. So all the little kelp fragments have broken down. It's given the water that milky appearance. We'll just see if the penguin is hoping to hop out. It looks like it. Looks like he's coming into a bit more of a sheltered channel. It always looks so graceful when they stand up once they've been in the water. It can be quite an adjustment to actually get your legs again once you've been swimming. So I always admire how the penguins do it so well. Let's see what he's up to. I think I've mentioned this on the show before, but I find penguins love to stop before they do anything. They really do like to think about it. So they'll be moving towards an area, so they'll move a bit and they'll stop and they'll think and they'll preen, and then they'll move a little bit more and they'll stop and they'll think and they'll preen. So they have these areas of, or times of high activity when they'll be swimming or they'll be walking. They never really sustain that. It doesn't last very long. You see the other oyster catcher who's really digging in the sand there. We're going to go have a look at this oyster catcher who's got its head deep in the water. I think it is digging for worms still, for the bristle worms. And the other one is going for the limpets. So I would guess, not having compared their bill size, that the one that we were watching earlier going for limpets is the male, and the one going for these little worms would be the female oyster catcher, because they do exploit different food sources. They can eat the same food source, but their bills are slightly different to exploit different things so that they're not competing with each other. You can see, I think it's a she, is sticking her head right into the water. But she's got sand beneath her there, so she's not detaching any limpets. And I believe it is her partner, who's to the left of her, who is on the rocky shoreline and is taking the limpets off the shore. So oyster catchers love to feed at this time of day. So they'll feed at low tide, and that could be during the day, but also at night. But she was so vigorous. She's calmed down a little bit now. You can see a little more vigor again. She really is scissoring that sand beneath her to pull those worms out. Oh, there, she's got the worm. So she can sense that there's worms there. She'll have sensors in her beak, and I'm sure the worms can also sense that their homes are being drilled away.
Watch out for southern ground hornbills. If you see one, then a curse could befall you. Seeing a hyena could bring out the witches, and spotting a snake track could give you a rash. On Friday the 13th of May, WildEarth will be setting off on a special Unlucky Safari, where we search for things that bring bad luck. Are these just mythical superstitions, or could they be true? Join us to find out.
Hukamore. Oh, here's an impressive looking male leopard. Look at that neck on him. He just looks ready for a fight.
This is only the third time that we are seeing him that is known as the Hukamori male, and he certainly has a lot of character and atmosphere.
This is gorgeous. Hukamuri having a drink at one of the little seasonal pans.
Isn't he absolutely gorgeous? Compact, powerful, focused. I love it.
You can see he's trying to scissor a limpet off there. So we are watching what I think is a male oyster catcher. He's got it, he's got his limpet. He's just scissored off a limpet from the rocks. And with a large limpet, they say that it's almost like trying to lift 100 kilograms off a rock. These limpets are attached via their very strong legs or foot. Spas, I'm so glad we got to show that to you today. That was so cool to actually watch him scissor it off. And so what they do is they get that they get sort of to the leg, and they need to get it off of the rock. And now he is tucking in. You can still see the leg, the foot inside the limpet. But it's an incredible skill that they have to actually take limpets off the rocks. And they like the pear-shaped limpets the best, because apparently they can see the back end of the limpet, so they can see where to grab it better. And so if you go anywhere where the oyster catchers are, you'll have a lot more oval-shaped limpets because the pear-shaped limpets just don't stand a chance with them. So cool to watch him eat. But it's interesting because the males have to work a lot harder. Cami, that's a tough question. It could very well be Oliver and Olivia because they were seen in this area. I actually wasn't here by the time Chipper and Chomp had fledged. I only started, so I wouldn't be able to confirm it. I'd like to think it is them. I'd like to think that they've stuck around in this area, and they are, to an extent, territorial, mating animals anyway. Or the mating pairs, rather. But to be honest, the only way we would ever be able to tell that is if they put little rings on their legs, and they put little numbers on the rings, and then we'd be able to tell which oyster catchers were which. And that's not very harmful to birds at all. The ring is specifically designed to fit on the leg. They're very lightweight. And then you can tell which oyster catcher you're looking at. And this week, or this last weekend, we had Cedric about, so we didn't actually get to chat at all about citizen science. But bird ringing is actually a form of citizen science. So you don't have to be a scientist to become a bird ringer. It's a process that you undertake. You become an apprentice. And then you learn how to put rings on different birds, which is really amazing. I've done it. I really enjoy it. And if you ever see a bird with a ring on its leg, what you should do is take a photo, try to get the numbers, and then in South Africa it's called saffring. So if you go onto the saffring website, you put in the numbers, you could probably find your bird. In different countries.
Look at that, there's a tiny leopard cub. Karula has given birth overnight. Look at the little guy, we just came around the corner. That is incredible, that's probably his first solo kill.
Oh, and have a look, here comes Osana with the monitor lizard.
Osana, of course, at the same time decided to go climbing up the tree. He's just nearly fallen out of it again.
Look at that, he's running away. The buffalo is chasing Osana at the moment. Run away from this very big animal coming. That was so funny.
So this, I believe, male oyster catcher is going in for ring number, oh, not ring, but limpet number 2. Number 3. So Flippy says this is going to be the 3rd limpet that this oyster catcher is looking for. And both oyster catchers are now going to be in a similar area. We might just see that they're still looking for different food. So I think that is the male that we're looking at, and I think he's trying all along all the edges. So the limpets will try to hide from the oyster catchers in the rocks and crevices. And as we're trying to watch these oyster catchers, that Egyptian goose is saying, my bathing is superior and you should really watch me clean myself. Being very dramatic about the bathing. There's nothing I love more with birds when they bath, when they dip their heads under the water and then shake their feathers as they've done it. lots of action just in one frame with the 2 oyster catchers and then that goose having a nice bath. And if you have a look around where the oyster catchers are at the moment, there is a lot of green algae. And the reason there's a lot of green algae in this area is because we have lots of oyster catchers. So if there were no oyster catchers here, the limpets would eat all the algae. But Kendra, that's an interesting question. You're asking how birds avoid getting their feet hurt by the rocks. I think bird feet are fairly hardy, and I think they're not very large like us. I think we struggle on rocks because our feet are very big and awkward, where birds have fairly delicate feet. And so I think they also weigh a lot less than us, so gravity is in their favor. But they do have quite tough feet and tough soles. So I don't think that the rocks hurt them very much. I think that they are adept at gripping onto the rocks so that they can actually stand up straight and hunt.
At WildEarth, our explorers are treated to a weekly newsletter, bursting with fascinating features and never-seen-before snippets. Recently, we have added some brand new sections which we think you will love. Find out what happens behind the scenes with our crew when they are not live on WildEarth. Have a giggle at our moments of the week from both Safari and Penguin Beach. And Ranger Eric answers your questions with fascinating and in-depth explanations as to the whys and hows of nature.
Wild dogs coming out of, or the puppies coming out of the den site making those very high-pitched noises.
All of this and more delivered to your inbox every week. So what are you waiting for? Head over to our website, sign up to be an explorer, and join the adventure. WildEarth Explorers, it's in your nature.
We're still watching this male oyster catcher going in for some food, scissoring its beak between the rocks. And I think with only a few minutes left, I really enjoy the fact that everybody's getting in on the fun of giving Cedric some trouble. So Kathy Lee says the little egret reminds her very much of Cedric. And I think there's comparable differences there, but lots of similarities too. I think Cedric is quite tall, that egret looks quite tall. I think on our next show, the next time we have an egret, we'll definitely have to do an identification check and actually look at the bird and think about Cedric, and we'll be able to isolate the differences just so that we know how to tell the difference should they ever be in the same place at the same time. It is funny though how some people do look, or some people will remind you of birds or of animals. I think with only a few minutes left, we might just take another look at our penguins. It looks like the couple that is yet to be determined are a little bit closer to each other again. The one closest to us is lying in a very awkward position. That bird looks like he's had a very hard day and is really just giving up on the rock there. But we hope that you guys have had a good show with us. It's been a very relaxed one. Flippy and I will be back tomorrow, and we're hoping to spend some time in the intertidal region, so we might do a bit of a walk around. We'll have to see how it goes and what's happening here tomorrow. I think the highlight today was watching that little egret look for some food, and I think seeing the oyster catcher also grab that limpet was super cool. They're always toddling about, but you don't always take the time to really watch them as they hunt and as they actually get hold of things. So on behalf of Flippy and I, thank you so much for joining us down here today. We had a lovely time showing you all the different birds, and we hope that you are going to see us tomorrow again at 1:30. And yeah, we hope that you have a fantastic rest of your Saturday. Tomorrow is also Mother's Day, so do remember that for your mothers in your lives. But thank you again, enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and we will chat again tomorrow.
This program features live coverage of an African safari and may include animal kills and carcasses. Viewer discretion is advised.